All right, so I want to thank everybody for being with us here today for our Embedded Controller GWN Series training webinar. Today's one of the more specific training webinars that we've had. Specifically today, we are talking about the embedded controller that is included with all of our GWN Series devices, just built right into the web user interface. No extra cost, no extra device to purchase or use, and it allows you to set up and control entire networks of other Grandstream GWN Series devices right from the web user interface of any one GWN 7000 router or any one GWN Series access point. So as I mentioned, that's pretty much the focus of today's webinar. I have about a 4 or 5 minute introduction here, basically going to tell you about what makes this controller so great, a little bit about how it works, and then I'm going to turn it over to Ernesto, who's going to actually take you through, basically show you a live demo of the GWN controller's web user interface, including obviously with the focus on the controller, show you how to set up, manage, use that controller to basically build and manage entire networks of other GWN Series devices right from the web user interface, as I mentioned, of any GWN Series device. So just before we get into it, these are the 4 current GWN Series devices out here, on the slide that are available today. The GWN Series, for those of you that might be new to Grandstream, especially here on the Wi-Fi or this networking side, one of the greatest, largest expansions in the history of our company. It's something that we are really looking to make, really one of the major points of our business going forward. Obviously, our unified communication solutions aren't going anywhere, and we have added these Wi-Fi access points and a networking router to give you the ability to just expand, to give our channel partners, resellers, the ability to expand what they're able to provide for their customers. Whereas previously through Grandstream, you're able to provide unified communications, IP phones, IP PBXs, gateways, ATAs, et cetera, now you're also able to add networking solutions to that portfolio. We have 3 different access points, the 7610 on the left, 7600 to the right of the 7610, and then the 7600 LR. Just to differentiate these models for you real fast, the 7610 is the model that you want if you're looking for to really maximize the speed you're able to offer in any indoor setting. Supports up to 1.75 gigabits per second, which is, as you'll see, more than the other GWN Series devices, as well as 250 clients. The GWN 7600, a little bit of a smaller in terms of its physical size device than the 7610, but it's also a round device, ideal for indoor use, and the 7600 is ideal if you're looking to support as many clients as possible. As you see, supports up to 450 Wi-Fi clients, 200 more than the 7610 does. So the thing I like to say, if speed's important to you, you want the 7610. If supporting a lot of clients is important to you, you want 7600. 7600 LR is our first weatherproof access point, so that can be used in any outdoor setting, obviously, as well as indoor, but it's really made for outdoor setting, and it's got an IP66 certified weatherproof casing. Gives you 450 clients support like the 7600, and because it is an outdoor, it is a long-range model, gives you up to 300 meters outdoors. Then you have the GWN 7000. That is the router. We're going to be coming out with a variety of additional routers in addition to other access points throughout the course of the next year or so, so keep an eye out for that. The GWN 7000, specifically a multi-WAN gigabit router, gives you full VPN functionality, 1 million packets per second routing, 10 gigabit per second throughput. So all of these devices, every single GWN device has a controller built in, and the controller replaces the historic, or the embedded controller that we offer replaces the historical controller model used by most manufacturers within this space. This model on the right, historically, what other Wi-Fi access point or networking manufacturers will require you to do is to purchase or download extra piece of software or hardware known as the controller, and that is what you would use to set up and control and manage every access point on the network. And you have to point each controller to each access point, set up each access point, and then move on to the next access point. Whereas what we have done is we have taken all of that functionality that is the controller, and we have embedded it into the web user interface for these products. So you don't pay anything extra for it, and you don't have to go anywhere else or touch anything else other than just the web user interface of any GWN series device. Our access points, the controller built into the access point web user interface can set up, control, manage up to between 30 and 50 other Grandstream GWN series access points, and the controller built into our router can control up to 500 access points. So you don't need to purchase anything else. You don't need to touch each access point individually. You can basically from one web user interface set everything up, extend all the networks to all the access points, and configure each access point, security settings, whatnot, from one centralized location. Just to throw it up here, we're not really going to be talking about it all too much today, although obviously the controller is built into our GWN 7000 router. I told you about it just a second ago. Just wanted to mention it again. If you're looking for, to really set up large networks where you can use that embedded controller to set up or control up to 500 Grandstream access points, the router, GWN 7000 is what you want. If 30 to 50 is in your sweet spot, 30 to 50 access points, then you can use the embedded controller in any of the access points. And as kind of a tease to something you'll see next year, we're also working on a cloud controller, which will be able to provision potentially hundreds to thousands of Grandstream GWN series access points. All right, so right after, to wrap up my intro here, right after this webinar, I do want to mention another one that we're having, which is being run by Kate Clavitt, who I'm sure many of you know, who is another member of our marketing team. She'll be telling you basically about, so the title of the webinar is GWN Series, a compelling scalable network solution. It's really a focus on how the GWN Series stacks up against the competition. She'll compare it to some specific major manufacturers that we are competing with. She'll also kind of detail some of the features that make the GWN Series such an attractive option. That is right after this webinar. You can sign up for it on the link on that I have there on the screen. Basically, meetings.ipvideotalk.com. Type in the meeting number, which you see there on the screen, 6999-3187/register. Or you can just go to ipvideotalk.com, select join meeting, and enter in that meeting number, 6999-3187. I will send the sign up link in case anyone's interested in attending that through the chat in just a moment. Again, that is right after this webinar, 10:30 a.m. Eastern time, or 1 hour after this webinar started in your local time, where you can learn a little bit about specifically how our GWN series stacks up against competition. All right, so let's jump into the technical training part of the webinar, where we'll actually show you the live demo of the controller, show you how to set it up, use it, all the power it has. So just bear with us here for a second as we transfer control of the presentation. There you go. We're going to pop back up on screen here. Nope, we are not. I forgot I turned that off. If anyone has any questions at any point in time, feel free to type them over, preferably through the question and answer panel, if you don't mind. That's the little Q and a chat bubble at the bottom right portion of your screen between a little person and between the settings icon. However, also feel free to use the chat. Any questions we don't answer, we'll get to at the end. And with that, turn it over to Ernesto.
All right. Thank you, Phil. Thank you for that introduction. Now everybody knows a little bit about the network product. As Phil mentioned before, I'm going to focus today into the controllerless option or feature that all our access point and router support. I'm going to focus my controllerless demo into an access point. So I'm going to be using one of the access point GWN 7610. But the very first thing you have to do is download an application. On our website, it's called GWN Discovery Tool. And that way, every time that you connect a access point or a router, you can find out easily the IP address and basic information like you can see right now. For example, MAC address, IP address, and firmware version. Keep an eye, eventually Grandstream is going to launch a cloud-based option that you can manage these from your smartphone app, and obviously from the cloud. Now, once you download this application, you basically select the NIC card that you want to scan. Typically it's your Ethernet card, then click on scan, and then all the GWN's product are going to show up on the screen. Typically, if you have more than one access point that you want to use it as the controller, the first thing that we recommend is to connect that individual device only. So take it out of the box, connect only one first, and then run the discovery tool, find out the IP address, and then go to the web interface. Just let me quickly log out. Once you know the IP address, obviously you enter it in your browser, then you log in into the web interface. There's a setup wizard that by following, I believe, like 5 or 6 steps, you can configure the whole network with the controller option. But in this case, I'm going to show you a little bit individually each menu so you understand how to enable it. Super easy. From the dashboard, I'm going to come back to the dashboard so you can understand, especially this option in the top left corner, how many access points are in the network, how many are discovered, and what type of band and client are using. But for now, let's go to the access points menu. Let me just remove these two quickly. All right, so the first thing is that your main access point, the same that you are logged in, is going to show up here. This is my main access point. Automatically, the system is going to recognize it as the master access point. Again, when you connect the second and third access point, they're going to be labeled as slave. So, second step, go to the Discover AP option, and then all your access points are going to start showing up in this menu. On the right hand side, you have an action button that says pair. When you click on that, then you now have an access point pair to your master. So you can add a third, fourth, and even more access point depending on the model. Remember, I think Phil mentioned that an access point controller can manage up to 50 devices. We have the controller option also in the router, the GWN 7000. The router is a little more robust hardware that you can control up to 200 access points. But now today I'm kind of giving a demo with the controller on the access point, okay? So you saw that the access point was kind of in an offline mode. It was provisioned and then now it's online. So basically starting now, you can start using the slave device as part of your controller. So let's go right ahead and click on the edit button so you see what you can do from the controller menu. Basically you can see the status from firmware version, MAC address, and IP address. And most important, the client. For troubleshooting purpose, you may have an SSID with multiple APs, but sometimes you would like to know how many clients are connected into one particular AP. Obviously, I don't have anything connected here, but eventually you can see the client, MAC address, host name, and more information like throughput and RSSID. Going to the next menu, you can even name that device with your own name, for example, because eventually you may have multiple APs, and for troubleshooting, you would like to know what AP is that one in particular. So, for example, you can say main lobby. So this is the access point that is in the main lobby, and then you can label other access points depending on the location they are. For that particular access point, you have this option that you can configure. So the frequency, obviously, as Phil mentioned, all our products support dual band from 2.4 and 5 gigs. Then we have an option that we call it band steering, that you can kind of steer up the frequency depending on the client's supported frequency. So for legacy devices or client computers, devices that they support 2.4 only, so it's depending on how many devices you have in a network. Sometimes you rather to allocate or to steer up dual band clients towards one particular band. So you have that option here. You can steer up to 2 gigs, to 5 gigs, or maybe you can let the controller to do a balance amount among the clients that are supported. And then right below you have settings for 2.4 and 5 gigs. So talking about, for example, the channels, depending on your Wi-Fi survey, you may want to force a specific channel. As you know, the auto option is ideal because the controller can assign channels in a random way, in a balanced way, sorry. Then you have options like radio power, depending on where you have the access point. Sometimes you don't want to have full power, you want to lower it or even keep it as medium. So these are basic settings that you can configure from each individual AP that is under the master controller. Let me go and show you another option. So basically now we have a master with one AP. Let me see if I can pull up probably a second AP. Yeah, we just got a new one. So now I can say, well, this one is being provisioned. Now I can say that this master controller comes with the AP by itself plus 2 more APs. Let's wait a few more seconds for that device to be online. Now it is. Now from this menu, keep an eye that you can see the firmware version. That's important because you need to make sure that you have the latest firmware on your devices. For GWN, by the way, keep an eye that we released a new firmware a few weeks ago. So depending on the model, the latest firmware is 4.12 or 4.22 for the 7610, which is, by the way, the one that we are demoing today. So this is my firmware 4.22. If you ever, so let's talk about firmware upgrade now that we are in this menu. If you want to upgrade the firmware of any of your slave devices, then you can simply check that box and click on the upgrade button. You can never upgrade from this menu yourself, so the same master device. As a matter of fact, when you click upgrade, there's going to be a notice reminding you that you cannot upgrade the firmware of the master access point. What you need to do instead, you go to System Settings, and there's a menu for Upgrade. Remember, if you go to the Grandstream website, firmware.grandstream.com, we already have all these firmwares ready for you to point your devices to, so they can get upgraded automatically. So you need to copy that URL, firmware.grandstream.com. You go to the System Settings, Upgrade tab, and basically just paste the firmware server right here. I mean, obviously you can use your own. You can use a TFTP server, HTTP, or HTTPS. Once you have that, make sure that you click on Save at the bottom, and then you click Upgrade button, and then the device is going to upgrade automatically. It's going to take a couple minutes. You're going to see some LED patterns, blinking in different ways to indicate that the firmware is being loaded. Now let's go back to the access point. We have already our firmware with the latest version, and we have one that is not, by the way. This is one of my GWN 7600. So probably I'm gonna do that right now. So click on that device and click on upgrade. So notice, are you sure you want to upgrade? Click OK, and basically that device is being upgraded as we speak. So that device is reaching out the URL that you enter in the other menu. The firmware is being pulled out of the server. In the meantime, let me go to one of the devices that I have as slave. For example, this GWN 7600 LR. Remember from the tool, from the discovery tool, you can find out the IP address, although, from this menu you can see it, right? So if you open up, and let me do a refresh, if that device has been paired already as a slave, then you won't be able to access the web interface. So because everything that is configuration related, now that is a slave, must be done from the master AP, which has the controller running. If you ever want to unpair it, so you need to go back to the master, and there's a button on the right hand side, probably you can see it, where you can link or pair or unpair the device. Once you do that, then the device is free, so then you can go to the web interface and do the configuration that you need to do. All right, let's wait a little longer. In the meantime, probably we can refresh. In that device, I can see the LEDs that it's blinking, and you can see the upgrading message. Now, before we move on to the next menu, let me show you another nice option that we have. Sometimes you may have multiple APs in a extend office deployment, and during troubleshooting, the access point is installed and on the ceiling. So, sometimes you don't have access to the ceiling, and you just need to know which one is which. So we added this nice, easy but nice option. On the right hand side, there's a button that when you click on that, then that access point LEDs are going to start blinking in I think white color. So then you can identify the access point within your deployment. In that way, then you can name it. So now that you know that that particular access point is in the main lobby or in the sales accounting office, for example, then you can go ahead, click on edit, and obviously, as I showed you before, enter the name of the AP, which typically is the location. All right, now people asking, what about if the master goes down? If the master is not available? So that's a good question. I have tested it myself. The system's still gonna be up and running until I believe the IP addresses lease time expire. Then you're gonna start having some issues. If you reboot the master, for example, that's not an issue. Within a couple seconds or maybe a minute, by the master not being available, that's not a problem. But if the master crashes or is basically out of power, then you're gonna run into an issue eventually. So we have this option that we call a failover. Then the master can fail over to any other IP that you select from the list. So by you selecting that, when you click on save, then the master is gonna communicate with that slave device, telling it, okay, now you are my failover. So the slave AP is gonna start kind of pinging the master automatically. You don't need to do anything every few seconds, and then when the master is not reachable, then the slave is gonna become the master controller. All right, so firmware upgrade is ready.
Hey, question through the chat. Do you have to reboot the access point to reflect the firmware for the new firmware to load?
No. So as a matter of fact, I haven't touched my AP, and I just upgraded the firmware. And it's still in the discovery or upgrading process. I can see the LEDs from here that are still blinking. So we're going to come back to this menu, and eventually you're going to find this access point online and with the correct firmware. That's all I wanted to show you from this menu. Now the most important is what to do with your controller. So obviously then you need to create your SSIDs and assign the APs of your choice. You do that from the network group option. Basically you click on add to create your group, your network group. Default is group 0. You can enter any name as you want. Eventually, you may have multiple groups. Obviously, you may have a VPN, for example, a VLAN, for example, or different groups on a different subnet of your network. Then you create your Wi-Fi SSID name. You select what type of band you want to use. We have an option that we call it wireless client limit. So again, you can set from 1 to 100, I believe, to 50 actually. So basically you can limit the amount of clients that can be logged on to the SSID. The next one is the captive portal. Captive portal is an option that we support, the controller supports. Basically you turn that on, and then you select what captive portal you want to use. There's another menu that I can show you quickly later, how to enable the captive portal, but today's presentation is a little more focused to the controllerless option. And then as any SSID, obviously you need to select what type of security mode you want to use. There's an option that we call it client bridge support. It's sort of to make the access point to work as a repeater or in a mesh environment. Then you have the client time policy. So there's another menu that you can create your policies, time related. Once you create that, a good example is you want to have an SSID working within office hours only, Monday through Friday, 9 to 6. Out of that time, then there is no SSID, or the network's not connecting. You can also filter by MAC addresses. You can create your whitelist or even blacklist to allow or disallow clients. Client isolation, this is a good option, typically used for guest network. So again, I'm creating a typical Wi-Fi SSID, but later I can create a guest network. By doing that, typically you create an isolation by selecting that option, and typically you select internet, meaning that any client connected to this SSID will be allowed to connect to the internet only, not within device to device or accessing the router, or things that are within the network are not permitted. All right, and finally you have the upstream and downstream permission that you can restrict it to any bandwidth of your choice. Back to the controller. So this is where you select the access point that you want to be part of the SSID. So again, a typical example, you may have 10, 15 devices, 10, 15 access points, and here's where you kind of manage what access point are going to belong to my SSID that I just created, and which one are going to belong to another SSID. So as an example, I'm going to have the master and only one AP. By the way, if I would name that AP, then I could see that right here. So it's easier for you to see what AP you are managing. And finally, the controller option, you can manage different schedules. So this is where you create your schedules. Typically it's Monday through Friday. You enter the start time and the end time. All right, as an example for as a guest network, then you go to the additional SSID, you click on add, and same thing that we did before, but in this case, you enter a new name and select the group that you want that guest to be under. We have only one at the moment. All the other options are the same: Wi-Fi password, SSID, upstream, and the schedule. So now we have two SSIDs, one as a guest and one as the main network. All right, let's talk a little bit about captive portal, although the intention is more towards the controllerless. But let me go back to the access point menu. So finally, this device is upgraded. I didn't reboot it. Everything's done automatically. You need to be patient, probably a few minutes, 2 to 5 minutes. The device should be back online and with the latest firmware. These two models, by the way, the 7600 and the LR, they share the same firmware version. So both are updated with firmware 4.12. Now, from the dashboard perspective, you can see the whole network. Again, this is an AP. You can see the same thing from a router perspective. The routers that we offer, the GWN 7000, besides doing the typical router features or settings, it also supports a controller. So whatever you can see in this dashboard, you can see it also of a router. So remember, we have about 5 GWNs detected in the network. You can see that here. 2 have been discovered, 3 are online, and nothing is offline. You can see how many clients are connected, what band they're being using at the moment. The goal is to keep this number 3 and 2, or this amount of clients, level with the same number. If you see that you have like 80% more towards one band, then is when we recommend using the band steering. And then obviously the channel allocation, you can see that depending on the band from channel 1 through 14. The non-colliding channels obviously are 1, 6, and 11. These are the channels that the system will automatically assign, because supposedly in that field, these channels are not going to collide with other access points from your neighbor or somebody else out of your office space. Then below you have the same channel allocation for the 5 gigs network or band. Then down here you can see the access points, how many clients are connected. So I have my master, I can see 13 clients. I have my secondary AP with 8 clients, and most important, the usage per access point. Probably it's a little, this one is a little half percent, maybe 50% more than my slave. But again, you can see that from here, and for troubleshooting for example, this is a good option. And then you can see the stats per SSID. So as you know, we have 2 SSIDs, the main network and the guest. And you can see that I have about the same amount of clients connected, and the usage is about the same. If you ever encounter multiple usage, a high usage, for example, then you can be a little more specific and check down here in this menu what client is utilizing more your network resources. All right, I believe that covers everything. Oh, okay, so again, one of the options that you can enable from the controller is the captive portal. Quickly, I can just show you the menu. This is where you basically, let me show you. When you go to Files tab, these are the default files or HTML files. Probably, let me see if I can quickly connect to one of my networks, although probably I connected it already in the past. So I can show you how the captive portal works. All right, while connecting, so, okay, it's coming up. So the browser obviously is gonna pop up automatically, and you're gonna be redirected to a, yeah, no, my bad. I already logged into this SSID, so I was authenticated already in the past. So obviously, typically when you select an SSID, if you're a new client, then the captive portal is gonna pop up, and then you're gonna click on accept the terms, and then click connect. So you can customize that page obviously by updating these files. There's a guide on our website, so we can show you even a video, so you can learn how to customize your page. From the captive portal, I don't know if you remember seeing that you have an option also to utilize a radius server. And the radius server is obviously letting the access point reach out to a third-party server for authentication purpose. And if you're using a radius server, then you need to have a different set of pages or captive portal HTML page or index page that when you select radius server, so for example, you have two options: no authentication, which will be using the typical captive or HTML page, or if you want to use this radius server, then you can select what page to use. So again, you can have, eventually you may have multiple HTML index pages. Depending on what type of authentication you're using, you can select that. And then obviously when the user connects to that captive portal or SSID, he's going to be prompted to enter a user ID and password. Those credentials are going to be authenticated against the remote radius server. And once you have a captive portal enabled, you can see your clients, you can see what SSID they are connected to, for how long they have been connected. You have settings that you can limit the time. You can limit the time per client, and this is where you upload it. All right, so hopefully I cannot cover everything about the controllerless option. We're gonna open up the Q&A. Phil is gonna be helping me with the questions. We have some already that I tried to cover during my presentation, but let's see if you have more questions. Feel free.
Cool, yeah, if you have any questions, feel free to shoot them over. If you don't mind, use that question and answer panel, but also feel free to use the chat. It's a good question. How does failover work when you're using the GWN 7000 or router as the master? Can an AP act as the failover master?
Yeah, that's a good question. The 7000, because it supports a more robust hardware. Remember, it can support more access points, up to 200, if I remember correctly. But a controller in an access point, you can have only up to 50. So that's why, as a failover, the router needs to have another router to fail over to. So routers fail over to another router, and access point to other access points.
Question on the captive portal, can it be used without a radius server?
Yeah, definitely. If you don't require authentication, then yes. Typically in the portal or the captive portal, you basically enter the company's logo, some disclaimers about using the internet, and then a little checkbox to allow the terms, and a button to connect. So that's a simple page, no authentication required.
So maybe not related to the controller, but how do you properly, or how do you recommend to properly set up DHCP on LAN? They're noting that the issue they're having is with DHCP lease time. It drops everything.
I'm not
Maybe we
too
need more
sure.
info on that one.
Yeah.
Also sounds like a pretty specific question that might be best answered if you file a support ticket with you, or with us, so we can follow up with you directly on that.
Right.
Also kind of unrelated, but figured I'd ask it out loud. Mesh, is that supported on all of our access points at the moment, or is that just with the 7600 LR, right?
Right. Just for now, but if you keep an eye on the website, the next firmware that we're gonna release within a couple days, maybe weeks, Mesh is gonna be supported across the board, all the APs.
Awesome. And so the question was, is there documentation for it? And I'm sure that once we release it in all of our AP firmware, you'll be able to find something on our website under resources about that. If you have any final questions, shoot them over. I've gone through pretty much all the questions that we had. As I mentioned, it was going to be a quicker, faster webinar today, just because we were focusing on one pretty specific point. And as you saw, half of our goal here today was just to show you how easy that controller is to use, how quick and easy it works for you. Yeah, let's see what we got here.
Yeah, and as Phil mentioned before, any support-related question that you have more specific, feel free to go to our website, helpdesk.grandstream.com. Sign up as you need to sign up first before opening a ticket. If you are a reseller, please check the option of Reseller Connect. So then your support inquiries are going to be prioritized.
Unrelated, but does the router support different LAN segments on different LAN ports, or is it one LAN and two WAN?
We do, beside VLAN, this is what is called VLAN per port. So we do have a particular port number 1, that we call it net port. That one can be tagged to a particular network, only that port. The other 3 ports, remember the router supports 4 ports. The other 3 ports are VLAN tagged. So whatever depending how many VLANs you configure, they're going to be using the tagging instead of the physical port.
Just looking something up here. Bear with me here for a second.
So in the meantime, just to let you know that the access point also support an option about the LED scheduling. So, sometimes you have the AP in a place that is at night, for example, you don't need the LEDs to start blinking to probably interrupt someone or triggering surveillance, motion detection, for example. So, you have that option that you can create a schedule and the LEDs will be shut off following that schedule.
All right, just bear with me here for just a second, just trying to answer a couple of people through the chat. Yeah, if there are any final questions, send them over. We'll hang on here for about another 10 or 20 seconds. See if there are any final questions. Bear with me just for a second.
Yeah, somebody was asking about Mesh. The latest firmware 4.12 that is supported in both devices, the LR and the 7600. These are the devices that support Mesh, and this is where you enable that. There's about to be released a document about how to enable Mesh. So basically, you need to select the device, click on that option that says bridge. Actually, it's kind of warning you that you need to have a static IP. Once you do that, then the device is gonna start working as a bridge. Then you need to have the devices in recommended distance. So then each device is gonna work as a repeater in order to create a mesh network.
Someone's asking about what the network port, I'm assuming on the access points, is for.
Well, I'm going to tell you both. The APs, they come with two network ports. One is called PoE net. This is the one that you typically connect the device to power the device on. If you want to piggyback another AP, then you can use the second port of the AP that is called net LAN. So by selecting this port, then you can piggyback to another AP. Net, yeah, my bad. So the AP second port is called net. That might be the question about. So that, remember, the AP works as a switch. So the PoE network is the main port, and the net port is your switch port, let's say. So then you can connect all the client or other APs.
What about, sorry if I missed
And by the way, sorry to interrupt. Typically, people asking about the PoE. What about the PoE? If the PoE is going to be passed through the net port? No, we only use the PoE for incoming power. We don't pass it through the net port.
Sorry if I missed it. Network port on the router.
Okay, yeah, and then in the router, then it comes with, as I said, 5 LAN ports. We label them as the first one as the net port, and then port 2, 3, and 4. And the net port in 2, 3, and 4 can be obviously work as a switch. However, you can specifically configure your net port as multiple options. Number 1, by the way, in the next firmware, you can use that net port as another WAN. So the router comes with 2 WAN ports. Now you can configure that net port as a third WAN. Second option is that you can create a VLAN specifically through that port. And number 3, you can link the sort of like a VLAN also, but you can link that net port to one of your WANs. You can say, I want this port, my net port, all the traffic to go through my WAN port number 2, for example. So then you have multiple options to use the net port for.
Awesome. Thank you, Ernesto. With that, we're going to wrap up today's embedded controller training webinar. As I mentioned, really it was meant to be a pretty quick and easy thing to show you how to how to use the controller, set everything up, and really how quick and easy it is. As I mentioned at the beginning of the webinar, we have another webinar on the GWN series that's starting in about 10 minutes, which we just got a notification for on our screen as we're sitting here, which I sent the link to sign up for in the chat. That is a webinar specifically on the competitive advantages of our GWN series. Kate Clavitt will basically compare our GWN series devices to some of the major devices from our major competitors out there, as well as really go through all of the great features that really differentiate the GWN series. So a couple of people asked, we did record this. It will be posted on our YouTube page. So check that. It's youtube.com/Grandstream Networks. Probably tomorrow I would expect to see the recording there. Somebody else asked if we send out notifications when we do post these. We actually have not been recently sending out notifications that we're posting webinars. You can find most of them on our YouTube page, and we will once again soon start sending out those notifications. So want to thank everybody for being with us here today. Now it's a very busy time of year, being that the holidays are upon us, so always appreciate you taking some time out of your busy schedule to learn a little bit more about Grandstream. Check our website, the training center, and our webinars page for additional upcoming trainings, or online trainings or webinars. If you're looking for in-person trainings, head on over to academy.grandstream.com. That is our new in-person training certification portal, academy.grandstream.com. We call it Grandstream Academy. So again, thanks for being here. Happy holidays to everybody, and we hope to see you again soon. Have a great day.